Hello, everyone, and welcome to my my game review of Lost Eidolons. So I did something a little bit different for this game, rather than just what stuck out to me throughout, and kind of mentioning it all in the end. I actually created a notes page, and I'm gonna kind of read through my notes and expand upon them. Ultimately, though, I want to make something abundantly clear. One thing to note with this game, they did not have a lot of funding. Ocean Drive Studio did not have a lot of funding for this game, and as far as I can tell, it's also their first foray into a turn-based game like this. I saw some information that I apparently borrowed heavily from a game called Fire Emblem, which was made by Nintendo. I'm guessing that the Lost Eidolons part, like the Eidolons of Power and stuff, that's what really tied into Fire Emblem the most with those mystical powers and stuff. Me personally, I think the game would have been fine without them. In fact, I think it would have been more than fine. Just have Balastar's, like Isoro's death caused Balastar to go over the edge. Like, that would have been perfectly fine. I don't think they really needed the Lost Eidolons. At the same time, though, I did like the magic, the monsters, which I'm sure was also probably borrowed to some extent from that game. I did also enjoy um, that blade that we picked up in Faunoct. I liked that. And I also thought that the world could have done a lot more expanding, though I understand on a budget, it's hard to do that. And that being said, although I'm not going to judge this game the way I would judge Red Dead Redemption 2, Rockstar Games obviously having hundreds of millions they could put into it that Ocean Drive definitely didn't have. I'm not going to say, oh yeah, it's automatically a high scoring game because of that. In my opinion, the biggest sin that a small studio can make is trying to do too much with too little. I think that this is something the Inquisitor recognized and did extremely well, cheaping out on graphics and combat for story. I think that was a brilliant call by Calypso Studios, and I absolutely agree with it. And honestly, Inquisitor, that's as close as it gets to a 5 out of 5 game in my book without being perfect, or pretty close to being a 5 out of 5 game. Obviously, there are games that might be considered like my standard for perfection isn't a game that has nothing wrong with it, or that I would say, like this, and that to be there. I don't have any of that to say. My idea for perfection for a game is a game that I enjoy from start to finish, and although I have a few quibbles with it, ultimately I come away saying I loved this game, and I would absolutely play it again in a heartbeat. And I can't say that for Lost Eidolons. I can say that for the first 22 chapters. I think 22 chapters is a fair amount. The first 22 chapters, I would play again, no problem. But this game really hurt itself, chapters 23 on. And there are a few ways that it really hurt itself. And I'm going to go over that first before I start going over the things that I really liked about the game. And the first thing was obviously the time. That last battle, if I hadn't been speeding through it, and I went back and checked through like all of the time, it took nearly 2 hours. That is way too long for a boss fight. In chapters 23 through 26, each fight took about an hour and a half to finish. That is too long for a fight to do. And I'm going to come out pretty clearly here, or pretty openly here. I haven't played a lot of turn-based games, but I have played Rogue Trader, and I'm going to compare this to Rogue Trader. In my opinion, Rogue Trader is a 4 out of 5 game because of the whole soft lock with abilities. To me, that if you have a game where abilities are like you can get perfectly through a game fine until you get to a boss fight and then you get soft lock because you're not using these abilities, that's automatically going to take a rating out. Now, that is a subjective thing. It could be that that's the same way with Baldur's Gate 3. I play through Baldur's Gate 3. I get soft lock, but I'm loving the game so much. I'm like, screw it. 5 out of 5. Gotta give it a 5 out of 5. But for Rogue Trader, it does hurt it. Now, it could be that the rest of Chapter 4 and Chapter 5 are so amazing, and all the side stuff is so amazing, I go, screw it. I have to give it a 5 out of 5. I love this game too much. But I don't see that happening. I just don't. So, right now, that's going to be kind of my gold standard, is Rogue Trader. And Rogue Trader, I never had any crashes. And I'll get more into that, but the big thing about Rogue Trader, the longest fight was the Edge of Daybreak fight. It was 40 minutes. It was going to go to an hour, and I was soft locked on it, so it was going to go to an hour before I lost. And all of the other fights, there were some pretty difficult boss fights in that game, but I was able to beat them. And I was able to beat them in a certain time frame. And I think Ocean Drive did a good job at this at the start, because most of those fights were 20 to 40 minutes. And sure, it was a bit cutscene heavy, but that's fine. Cutscene heavy is great. And I think their big thing was that sometimes less is more. I've said this a lot. They failed on the less is more part. Now, I'm going to cut them a little bit of slack because it does seem to be this is one of their first goes at a turn-based game. But going forward in the future, if anybody from Ocean Drive ends up like watching this video for whatever reason, like a dev or something, you got to work on trimming down those fights. I'd rather have a shorter game that I enjoy playing through to the end, and I'll be going back and replaying a couple of times, than a super long game because I'm having a lot of long turn-based fights that I dislike. And I agree that the escort mission with Eden was no bueno. I think it was well done narratively. It was well done narratively enough that I can justify it without knocking a point down, or knocking any points down on it, except for how long it was and how winding the road was. That is not something you do in an RPG. That's a MMORPG with multiple people doing an escort mission like that, or maybe maybe like a Battlefront 2 kind of game if it's game mode. It's a big enough sin in a regular RPG, but in a turn-based RPG, that's just a giant no-no. So yeah. But going kind of back to the crashes that I mentioned. The big thing is that I think Ocean Drive tried to do too much with too little. I had more crashes in 70, 80 hours worth of Lost Eidolons than I did in 6,000 plus hours of the 10 most top played games I've had. I think I had either 8 crashes for Lost Eidolons, including when I was trying to save the game to prevent crashes right before I finished something, so I had to go back and redo it all. And they mostly happened in the turn-based fights, and all of them happened from Chapter 23 on, except for one, which was the Reclaiming Lyriar fight, which was Chapter 21. I think it was 21, it was Lyriar. Might have been 20. No, it was 21. I think. My brain's not working right. No, because 17, then 18 was Vyugar. Might have been Chapter 19. But yeah, the Reclaiming Lyriar from Guillermo was the first crash I had, and I just had a ton of crashes after that. And that's because they made the fights too long, and they put too much into it. And it didn't run smoothly enough on PlayStation. Say what you will about Fortnite, I've said a lot about Epic Games. They put serious work into making sure Fortnite runs smoothly. I have pretty high settings on there, and that game hasn't crashed for me. Actually, it's crashed for me once. In the 4,000 hours of Fortnite that I played, it's crashed for me once. I've had 6 crashes in the 6 games I've played the most. Now, obviously those games all had bigger budgets, but I refer back to the Inquisitor. I had 0 crashes with the Inquisitor, and I think Ocean Drive, once again, tried to do too much with too little and ended up screwing up with the crashes, and it messed with the game. I also saw some people mention this, and I saw it a little bit, but not too much, because I was on easy mode. Apparently from normal on, it gets really difficult. That Balastar boss fight has a noticeable difficulty spike from Balastar boss fight to everything else in the game, and that's also a problem. A boss fight should be challenging, but it shouldn't be so challenging that you have to multi-prepare for just that one fight. And that fight was both long and challenging, and that's okay for a Souls-like game. That's not okay for a game that's not a Souls-like game. So that's another thing that hits against it. Let's see. What else do I have? I will actually say this. Um, for that everyone v Balastar fight, when we caught him in the guard, and he said the line about ignoring his instincts, I feel like then that's when the Eidolon's soul burnt. Like we attack him once, and then the Eidolon's soul burns bright, and he gets his 106 or even 200 health. I wouldn't have been opposed to a 200 health increase. And that was a one fight, but the two fight thing or the three sections thing was a little bit excessive. I will also say that I got really pissed off when the game crashed when I was trying to save it. That's a serious problem, and it again goes back to that game crashed. I also felt that some classes when you were fighting them were stupidly overpowered compared to others. The assassin class was kind of mid. Berserker class was just abandoned. Essentially, I felt abandoned. Like berserkers were just not a challenge, whereas vanguards and templars, oh my god, there was one point where almost every single hit I made against a vanguard or an elite vanguard was guarded. They turned into literal mini bosses, and that's a problem. It should be that they guard more, like a decent amount of hits, but they shouldn't be guarding pretty much every single hit. At most, they should be guarding half of hits. So that was a problem with enemy, like with class balancing. It's also kind of annoying that there are certain classes that are just 10 times better than others. It should have been a bit more balanced out. And I understand you probably didn't have a lot of time to test it, but you didn't need to overpower vanguards. I can kind of understand it with Templars, but the healing mechanic with them does make their ability to guard just that much more broken. That being said, I did like, as much as I complained about it during the game, that was just me belly aching. I really did like how they could heal their allies, enemy NPCs, and I think that a lot more turn-based games should allow that to happen. That being said, me personally, this is just a personal thing, I would like if they had less heals than the player, but that's just a personal thing. I felt really annoyed and really challenged by them healing. It made it so that way I had to put more effort into my strategizing, which I did like. I also really did like that you could do limited or unlimited turns, because that allowed for different strategies. And the last thing I really liked on the turn order, unlike Rogue Trader, I wish Rogue Trader had done this, but I understand the kind of RTS turn system that they had. I wish you could move whoever in your party, and the enemy could do the same. That was such a good mechanic that Lost Eidolons and Ocean Drive, or that Ocean Drive implemented in Lost Eidolons. I absolutely loved it. Full props to Ocean Drive for that mechanic. I hope to see it in BG3, but if I don't, or which I don't know if I will or not, I'm gonna be disappointed. I think this is the superior mechanic to the RTS turn base, where like it's one person, then the other person, or I guess grand strategy, not RTS. My bad. Grand strategy. Screw me. I mix things up all the time. Much better than the grand strategy system. So hats off to Ocean Drive for that. One other thing that I felt was kind of annoying, and I felt they should have spent more time on this. They could have taken resources away from longer battles and some of the chapters of Eden running, was to focus on Morin and his experiments. I mean, Morin kind of, he was built up a bit like Kaspar, but I'll get into Kaspar after this. Same with Ludovictus. And there's all these things about extending life. He had this weird creature, Gustave, and then they just vanished. And I'm really, really interested in that whole subline. I would have liked to have seen that more. I feel like they could have focused a little bit more on the Empire, maybe a clash with Ludovictus, or have him still alive and something to fight. There were things that they could have done. I feel like, once again, they tried to do too much with too little, and it hurt them. I did like the romance features, though I kind of wish Leonard was a optional partner, because you can't tell me that there wasn't some chemistry there between him and Eden. That being said, there were a lot of things that I felt they did really well. I've got to say, most of the characters were very, like, main core characters in Eden's mercenary company. Marshall, Leonard, Clara, Gilbert, Albrecht were very well written, and I did find them compelling. I had some problems having Balastar feel compelling. His lackeys did not really feel compelling, especially like Alina. She should have deserted him. I don't think Elias would have stuck with him to the end, but the rest of them, it did feel most loyal. The one thing, though, that I'm really mad about is that they killed Chelsea off screen. I wouldn't have had as much of a problem if it were Godfrey, but Chelsea was so annoying, and you pushed her back so many times. To not be able to kill her yourself is a disservice to the player. We were owed that much, and we didn't get it. And again, you don't need to face the same bosses over and over again and have them withdraw over and over again. You can have one or two of them show up, have it be a bit of a challenge, and like they were, and then once you take them out, they die for good, and have Balastar's allies slowly picked off. That being said, though, I did like one thing that I did like was initially the game felt super utopic, but it soon became pretty dark with like Leon's death and the way everything changed after the Empire. I did like that switch from utopic to a lot more realistic and gritty. And I liked how Balastar's arc was handled with Abramo being a traitor, because it leads to the question of were his actions justified. Beheading Cristobal, being a bit iron-fisted, causing a lot of a ruckus. I mean, all of these lords worked with Abramo, and Abramo killed off his uncle, who he saw as a father figure. I do think, though, Abramo should have been fleshed out a bit in an expanded cutscene. Again, taking away from those longer battles to focus on that kind of stuff would have been nice. Though the devs did actually acknowledge the ambiguity with Abramo's motives in a Twitter post about the voice actor returning to another project of theirs. So that was nice of them. But at the same time, though, I wish that it had been a bit more explicit. Most people seem to think that it was him trying to balance out the power of Isoro, because he feared that he was just being used as a figurehead, and Isoro was going to remove him when he was done, which I don't think Isoro would have done. But it should have been fleshed out a little bit. I also think that regarding Warren and his experiments, I actually gamed out an entire thing where instead of Albrecht helping us in a cutscene before Kjorzen against those Anaspida, just get rid of the Anaspida entirely and have Albrecht aid us in the fight against Abelard. Have Abelard ram the gates or something, close the gates or something, or do something, and Albrecht appears to help us out and gets rid of the impediment that Abelard puts up. So that's something that I would have liked to have seen, but we didn't, unfortunately. I also would have liked the Cornelian Spire to be fleshed out a little bit. That would have been nice. But yeah, overall, I also did like the cynical politics. Eden's character going into cynical politics was nice. Avenging Abramo with the Alliance felt realistic. And same with the arrogance of the nobles leading to their downfall. That was brilliantly done. And I will say they made Corel kind of likable to an extent for me. So I'm glad that we got to recruit his two retainers. That was pretty nice. I do wish, though, we could have gotten some kind of closure with Sobek, Lady Sobek being killed. That would have been nice, but can't have everything. Overall, though, this game, if you had asked me up until chapter 23 what I would have given it, I would have given it a 4 out of 5 without any hesitation. It was pretty good, but I did have that crash, and I felt like there were little things that they could have fixed that I mentioned, fleshing out some of the stuff in the story, taking away from parts that didn't need to be there. After chapter 22, though, it dropped down further, and I've ultimately got to give it a 3 out of 5. I don't think it deserves anything lower than that. I think a 6 out of 10 is a solid rating for it. Ocean Drive, I really hope has made some makes some changes with their next couple of games if they do more turn-based games. But I can't justify giving this game like a 3.5 or a 4 out of 5 or a 7 out of 10. There were just too many issues. Now, the crashes may have been native to PlayStation. They may have put a lot of effort into the Steam version, but I'm rating this based off of my experience. So yeah, my final verdict, not that anybody cares, is Lost Eidolons was a 3 out of 5 game, and hopefully Ocean Drive, whatever turn-based game they make next. I know they made a roguelite turn-based based off of or within this kind of universe, but I'm not going to play that because roguelite turn-based is not my kind of game, not my genre. But I'm hopeful that that the next game they make that's turn-based, if they make any upcoming turn-based games, they do implement some of these ideas that I have or like suggestions about like lowering, especially making sure that the game runs smoothly and lowering the length of the battle, even if you raise the difficulty a little. But we'll ultimately see. So yeah, thank you all for watching. I hope you guys have enjoyed, and I will see you all tomorrow with what may or may not be a playthrough announcement.